which streetscape could represent. So this theme could be repeated in other streetscapes at varying levels, and I think that's an important thing to recognize as a planner and landscape architect. Oh, and one more thing for Chinatown, just to point out some specifics: the emerald green light posts line the street, very iconic. The iconic peaked roofs are tied into some of the light posts, awnings, and architecture. You can see the buildings kind of on the skyline there. And string lights give a ceiling to the pedestrian streetscape. And of course, while I was there, it was extremely busy. There was as the street was closed off even to personal vehicles, so it was an exciting place to be. And then the next district is the Tenderloin district. So this is not far from Chinatown, but it is very different. And this picture kind of represented the Tenderloin district in my mind as I was going through pictures I could find. So here's the Tenderloin district in conjunction with my room location. Not far from Chinatown. So this image summarized some of what my experience was like in the district with the current social problems ongoing. So homelessness is a significant social implication on the streetscape, and you know there are diverse perspectives and ways of going about that. But for now, I was concerned about walkability and how these social problems can affect walkability. So this image summarizes some of what my experience was like, but it was not hard to see why this was one of the top rated areas on Walk Score. A lot of activity is packed into this district with amenities and also multimodal transit. So this district did not boast anything outlandish for walkability attributes, but it did check off most of the boxes. I felt comfortable traversing here for a number of reasons. The scale of architecture was varied, but maintained a balanced sense of enclosure. And there was diversity of all sorts. There was a significant amount of infrastructure acting as a barrier between moving traffic and pedestrians. There was a variety of businesses to engage my interest. The primary attribute I was focused on was outdoor dining, and this brought activity outside, helping the street feel like a safe and fun place to be. I was there in the morning with less activity, but it was easy to see businesses, furniture, and streetscape elements that energize the district even during social strain, like during the travel course during the October time that I went in 2021. And this picture shows some of the outdoor dining that was present and was even used during morning hours, and I'm sure was used more during lunchtime and dinner time. There's a lot going on this streetscape, and I think almost all of these elements, the trees, the wayfinding, all contribute to the walkability of the Tenderloin district. On the left there you can see a blue covered dining area, and this is something that San Francisco I think really emphasized with COVID. I'm sure they already had applications around San Francisco, probably especially in districts like the Tenderloin district. So this was an interesting application to use a parking space, street side parking, and provide covered dining, for mostly restaurant use. So again, going back to our framework here. So first we talked about the rating systems and how they applied, and then went over the districts with a bit more detail with some examples of what attributes made each of the districts and the streetscapes walkable. So lastly, I'll go over how multimodal transportation supported walkability throughout San Francisco. So multimodal transportation supports walkability in the utilitarian sense, getting from A to B by bike, bus ride, or Bay Area Rapid Transit, was the train that goes acts as a spine for transit in San Francisco. During my short stay in San Francisco, I kept track of the amount of time I spent in each mode of transit. I couldn't necessarily walk everywhere I wanted to visit, even though a local probably could live close enough to everything they need. I wanted to see more of San Francisco, of course. I did not count walking at touristic destinations such as Golden Gate Park, but I just counted walking during travel, so getting from location to location. So first I used train to travel the furthest distance, other than plane, in the shortest amount of time. So that was the Bay Area Rapid Transit. And next I took the bus transit and connected a bulk of my trips with walking as a bookend on my routes. So I'd walk to the bus stop from my apartment and then ride the bus generally to where I wanted to go, such as the Tenderloin district we just talked about. And then I would get off the bus and travel to a specific destination or generally explore. And then next was the biking. So I just used biking during one day, but it did seem like an extremely effective mode of transportation in San Francisco, as the blocks are smaller and so cars have to stay slower, but it makes biking comparable as time-wise, getting from place to place. And then last, I traveled the shortest distance and experienced the most by walking. And so here's a recap, kind of the percentage breakdown of the amount of time I spent doing each, and most of the time was spent on the bus, as I was trying to see as much as I could of San Francisco during my travel course. Knowing how to mix multimodal transportation is key in maximizing efficiency, getting from point A to B. However, truly walkable streetscapes like the ones I analyzed are destinations in themselves. So, that's a place where I felt the urge to slow down and look around us. For example, this right image shows, I think this is Grant Street again in the Chinatown district. It shows so much going on, it's hard to want to speed through it. And so one bonus topic I want to talk about is catalyst. And so prior I kind of mentioned, or we looked at different pictures and determined in just a couple of seconds whether a street was walkable or not. And that first impression, Saxon walkability, is what I referred to it as. And so looking at those pictures again, I really broke down during my travel course what amenities are making these streetscapes so inviting. And as I'm talking about a catalyst, this is something I didn't necessarily expect to discover in San Francisco. It's that streets that are walkable aren't really walkable unless there's a presence of human activity. And I think once that initial energy is rolling, then you have a catalyst. And it seems like people like to be where people are, and that's not new to us as landscape architects and training. And so but I didn't realize how important the presence of people were. Whereas some streets in the Mission District had every amenity you could ask for, even more than in this image. But without the presence of people, it just didn't feel walkable. It didn't feel as inviting or safe. Again, here's Grant District, and this is people are what make a place feel inviting and really walkable in the end. So again, to recap my objectives there, I can confidently say that I gained an in-depth perspective of the social needs, primarily of locals in an urban environment streetscape. Much of the destinations I went to were touristically oriented, and many of those were definitely walkable in the literal sense, or the utilitarian sense. However, I was particularly interested in how to apply the principles that I learned in my travel course to a career field, potentially designing streetscapes where people, I want people to feel, I want it to feel inviting in the designs that hopefully I get to design in the near future. I learned lessons, and then number 2 here, I learned the lessons from those streetscapes that have prioritized pedestrian use for a long time. San Francisco, I think, was the right choice for location. You could see just the depth in the layout of the streetscape, the amenities. It was oriented towards the pedestrian and had been that way for many years. And then third, to gain cultural experience. Sorry, one second. That was a really important goal of mine. Returning home, I recognized that such an experience provided me an opportunity to develop professional poise from cultural exposure, and I'm glad that I had such an opportunity. And then in conclusion, walkability can be looked at as a travel mode. It can be seen as a quality of a streetscape, attracting pedestrian activity. So looking at it in the sense of a travel mode, walkability can be especially measured with the walk score. But looking at the quality of the streetscape at attracting pedestrian activity as a destination in itself, the American Planning Association Great Places, the Great Streets, those are the attributes that really sum up, and I was able to identify places through that rating system. I use the APA rating system the most. And then it can be a personal perspective. So how comfortable an individual is in the streetscape can of course be subjective. But I think our first impressions are often pretty close to what people generally will experience. So with my first impression, Saxon walkability, I was glad that I allowed that room for potentially subjective, but first impressions of what a streetscape, how walkable it is, how inviting. And so that was important during my analysis as well. Mixing these rating systems provided a framework to discover amenities, styles, infrastructure, and culture that support walkability. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity I had to go on this travel course. I had good help deciding and discovering a place to pick for my travel course, and we got to play it out to the end here. So again, I'm thankful for all the help and support I had, including my family, to make this happen, and appreciate your attention, and I want to say thank you.